Welcome back, Calvary fan. Once again, my name's Dave Payne. I am one of the elders and also the director of digital ministries here at Calvary Baptist in Bristol. And we are on our final day, our final session of our short look at Ruth. And first of all, happy Thanksgiving if you guys are watching this on Thanksgiving, and happy whatever day it is if you are just coming along this video and series later. That's the neat thing about looking in the Bible. It doesn't, even though we prepare it for certain times, it doesn't mean that it always reaches and affects everybody in the time that we imagine. But enough of that. We have been doing just quick little short dives into each chapter of Ruth, pulling out a little nugget of a way that we can be thankful in this season of Thanksgiving. And so we have gone pretty much through just three different, like the previous weeks, like we were saying thankful for community. In week 2, we were being thankful for provision. And last week, week 3, we were thankful for redemption. And this week, we're just talking and focusing on being thankful for hope. Once again, if this is your first one, I'm not going to be reading the whole chapter. This is just supposed to be something you can go along. So if you guys have to pause the video to read the chapter or read the whole book, no problem, do that. We will be here by the time you hit pause again. And I honestly, like, if you guys are watching us on Thanksgiving, I don't want to take away from any more dinner prep or trying to get the kids ready to leave, or if you're just like, I really want to go watch this parade that starts in the next couple minutes. So let's get on with it. Let's dive into it. So just real quick, a couple of highlights from chapter 4. At the end of chapter 3, pretty much Ruth told Naomi what happened, and Naomi's like, well, just sit down. We will hear by the end of the day, if not a couple hours, of what is going to be happening here. Okay? So he is not going to wait long, and it shows that he was correct, because right away Boaz goes to the city gates and quickly finds the closer redeemer, the guardian redeemer, and also calls over the city elders, and they all sit down by the city gates. And for people who may be unfamiliar, like, why the city gates are very close to like how our court system, like how going to court and doing this. So Boaz tells this other relative what is happening, and like, just like, hey, you're gonna get all the land. He's like, oh, okay, cool. And he's like, but you also get Ruth. And he's like, I'm not so cool with that. And after a little bit, Boaz is like, well, I'll take it if you're okay denying it, and which was just part of the tradition since he was closer. And the other relative agrees, and Boaz, in front of the elders, shows that he's willing. He pretty much gives a payment for this in front of all the elders, and from there, Boaz and Ruth, they pretty much get hitched. They get married. And throughout the rest of the book, it just kind of brings a neat closure to this whole story of how they have a child, with how Boaz and Ruth have a child named Obed. And from there, we just learn like how like Ruth like kind of gets her joy back. And then like the end of this chapter, which I don't know, some people might think it's a little weird, but it's really interesting of how this child is in the direct line of David. And for people who may not be as familiar with some of the stuff in the Bible, the reason why David is so important is that he is the king of Israel. He's the second king after Saul, and was just still looked at today in Israel as just this like amazing leader, and like kind of just very important to just Jewish background. And that's pretty much the whole chapter. It's the end of the book. And so a few takeaways, at least one. Throughout this whole book, like, we see how God pretty much gave a community to somebody who was broken, provided to this couple who had nothing, and was redeeming the rejected. And now we see how God is working to bring hope to this small family. It's very interesting that in the beginning of this book, we read how Naomi, she doesn't really have hope. She wants to be called Mara, and is in complete despair. The only tiny little physical light in her world is Ruth, who gave up everything she had to join Naomi during this time. And now at the end of this, it's like Naomi is full of life and joy. You can see how thankful she is, from the pretty much of this child. And I'm just assuming, because it doesn't go on from there, of just how much I don't know. I've seen grandparents care for their grandkids, and I would imagine it doesn't change throughout time for the most part. However, through all of this, we see just the small family, just Ruth and Naomi being joined with Boaz. We see how there's hope brought to this family. There was the hope of marriage, which happens. There is the hope that comes from this child, and then just reading this genealogy, there's the hope of the future. Which it's just also interesting because, once again, genealogies, I know they're not the most exciting thing to read, but it's really interesting. We read this, and then there's other genealogies within the Bible. But then there's one that kind of really ties close to this, that shows the line of David leading all the way up to Jesus, and which today in church and stuff, we talk about how much hope we have in him for within the resurrection and stuff. However, I do want to just challenge you guys, are we actively thanking God for the hope of what he is doing? Are we thanking him for the hope of today? Are we thanking him for our hope of the future? If we read the Bible, different versions of the Bible, if you just do a Google search of Bible verses on hope, there's 25 verses on hope, 30 verses on hope, all these different ones, and it's all just talking about when we're in hardship, casting our hope upon him. And we see how this family in this book does that, and how God just gives them, brings them hope. I'm not going to say that every hope is going to be fulfilled exactly how we ask for or anything, or just to the letter of the T of what we're saying, but God is willing to help us out. And even though it's we might have our list, sometimes it's just that act of faith and saying, Lord, I have hope that here's what is going on, and I know, and I have my hope in you that you will see this through. And so I would just ask you guys and challenge you guys that just to if you guys are keeping notes, as I mentioned throughout this study, of just writing down your hopes and just, I don't know, keeping track of them. Because sometimes I remember, this reminds me of this story, a personal story. It just came right to my mind. But when I was in college, I really wanted to join the worship team at that time. I used to play bass guitar, and pretty much all the musicians at that time left, and I really wanted to play bass. I was I'm really thinking about it. I remember talking to a person that was a mentor up there about that, but I was torn because I really wanted to go, and it was an internship / up at this school. It was pretty much, it was called our ministry, pretty much where you would have something that you just did throughout the year. And it was going and helping out this church. And it was pretty much, we would go up there, get involved with their youth group, and just get involved with the students and everything. And yeah, it was one of those things that I was I don't know, I'm kind of also wanting to do this, but I would really love to play bass and be part of the worship team. And I remember telling my mentor at the time, and he was you should just pray about it. And And he gave me a few different points of advice, and so I was praying about it, and what came out of that prayer was like, I could join the worship team, but I really believe that I will be challenged more in working at this church and helping them out. And so I called up my mentor and was like, this is what I'm thinking. And he was like, okay, yeah, like, we don't know what God's gonna do. Let's just see what happens. And so I go there and everything works out. I'm on that ministry team. We're heading up to that church. And from there, within like the first month of us going up there, I noticed that they didn't have a bass player. And so I asked, I'm like, would you have a problem with me joining? And they didn't. And then from there, it was like every week going up there. I wasn't part of the school's worship team that would go around and travel and play music at different events and stuff, but I had a hope, and it changed what the venue, but the Lord still kind of gave me this way to play bass at this church. And like from there, there's so many doors and opportunities and just life growth that has happened from me going to that church that I can guarantee wouldn't happen if I went and joined the church's worship team. And so even though we have our hopes and what we would like to do, and we ask the Lord what would happen, it might not fully come out the way we are hoping, but that hope that we place in Him will not be discarded. It might come out a little bit different. So I just encourage you guys to write that down and not just stay at like what your hope is, but just record like the journey of those hopes, and just continue to bring it to Him in prayer. In fact, all these things, just continue to thank God, as we said, of community, of provision, of redemption, and finally hope. And just thank Him for all these things that He has provided in us. Like, I don't know, I'm thankful, like, just honestly, going through this book, because I never looked at Ruth this way. And I'm thankful that, like, within prayer and stuff, like, I originally was planning on doing something else, but the Lord was like, He kept just pushing the book of Ruth. And now we're done. And I just thank you guys for joining us. I hope you guys have a lovely Thanksgiving, or whatever day it is that you're watching this. And until next time, I hope you all have an amazing night and day. See ya.